Good afternoon, distinguished ladies and gentlemen of the press. I'm very happy to welcome all of you back here after a brief period away to the foyer of the Executive Mansion at our regular press briefing. However you're listening, we'd like to welcome you on behalf of His Excellency the President of the Republic of Liberia and Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces, Joseph Yuma Boakai Sr., President of the Republic of Liberia. However you're listening to this live briefing, wherever you are, whether you're in the diaspora, you're in the counties, or you're just where you are, we'd like to welcome you to our weekly press briefing. And since we launched this activity, is to really keep you updated as to the activities, the actions, and discussions, conversations, decisions of His Excellency, and really helping to explain to you what the President have done over the period and what he continues to do since taking office in January 2024, 2024. And the President is upbeat every day, very active, busy. Sometimes even my energy sometimes is even lower than his as he continues to work for the Liberian people. In our Liberian palace, we can say the old killing the young, but I mean, it's something that we're committed to, and it's something that His Excellency as well is committed to working in the interest of the Liberian people, and something that he has asked all of his lieutenants to join him and ensure that the business of the Liberian people are done. And as you all know, you are aware, our President left the country last 2 weeks to visit the United States of America. He's back in the country. The President came last evening along with members of his delegation following a very productive time away. And this visit for Liberia is an important time, and for today's briefing, we will endeavor to really bring you a two-part editorial on the importance of this visit, but also another very important decision that the President took over the course of the week. We'll give you pretty much a reason why we believe that they are very important. Again, like I mentioned, the President returned, and during his working visit between the 23rd and the 30th of April 2026. The visit is very, very important as he continued to commit to strengthening Liberia's international partnership in advancing peace, unlocking opportunities for national development. During the course of the week, the President undertook high-level engagement with academic institutions, public safety networks, and authority, and the Liberian diaspora and international partners. The President's visit was very important and is headlined by his participation in the 34th African Peace Award ceremony that was held in Sacramento, California at the California State University. During the event, the President was honored for his enduring contributions to peace, democratic governance, and regional stability. In his remarks, the President called for strengthening global solidarity in addressing threats to peace and global security. Also, whilst in America, the President participated in an exclusive reception hosted by the senior leadership of the California State University. At that event, it was an event that was engaging with policymakers, stakeholders, academic leaders in fostering dialogue on education, innovation, and Liberia's forward march towards development. Also, part of his engagement in the United States, there was also a very important meeting that was held with the Arizona State's Public Safety Chief. And during that meeting, the government of Liberia and members of the security team, inclusive of the Liberian National Police, the National Security Advisor, and other key leaders, were all involved, and part of situation or conversation that was held around what Liberia can benefit include capacity development, and as well as professionalization of our police, especially the public safety component, community policing frameworks, modern investigative and forensic capabilities, institutional governance, and digital transformation. The Arizona delegation in turn shared insights of the public safety system in their state, and they expressed their readiness to collaborate with Liberia and support our public safety infrastructure. Key areas of possible collaboration that they're intending to work with Liberia on, like I mentioned, training and capacity building through exchange programs and specified courses, technical advisory support on policing reforms and internal accountability systems, equipment and logistics support, particularly in communications and maintenance, digitalization of police records and case management systems, joint workshop, technical missions, and community outreach programs. Provisional outcome of the meeting also included a mutual understanding to establish a formal collaboration framework, agreement on an initial need assessment process for the Liberian National Police, the plan to pilot training programs and promote workshop within the next few months, the exploration of funding opportunities through US-based partners, donor institutions, and the engagements are all very important in helping to modernize Liberia's security sector and enhance public trust. For our president, he believes that these engagements and building such network will really help Liberia's role when it comes to ensuring that public safety, particularly community policing, is enhanced, because he believed that all citizens must be safe, but the right capabilities and capacities will help to support our Liberian National Police. Also, part of the engagement, as you know, since his election into office, majority, if not all of his meetings or his travel that he's done in other countries, he has done his best to engage the Liberian diaspora. In diaspora meetings, in town hall meetings, where he really come to face with the challenges Liberians are faced with in those countries, but also so that he's able to account to the Liberian people that are not in Liberia on the progress made so far in the country, but also the challenges, because he had an opportunity to explain some challenges where Liberians themselves ask questions. And most of the time what he does when he's visiting with some members of his delegation, he encourages the delegation to also respond, because some of the delegation are direct leaders of the sectors that people have key interest in. And part of that, he met a number of communities, inclusive of the town hall, but also individual engagement within members of the community to really see how he can strengthen the diaspora. In addition to what he's done with the diaspora community, setting up an office here at the Executive Mansion, holding the first conference, the first diaspora conference for the country that was held in the United States, and a number of other things that have happened to really see how the diaspora can be seen as not just Liberians living abroad, but have key stake in the governance and governing of our country. And he's very keen on that. Also, during the course of the week, our president did sign Executive Order number 163 on technology and digital governance. As part of his broader governance agenda, President Boakai signed Executive Order 163 aimed at accelerating Liberia's digital transformation. The executive order will strengthen national ICT infrastructure, enhancing e-governance and digital public service delivery, promoting innovation within government institutions, supporting data management, cybersecurity, and transparency. The action, particularly this one, highlights the president's commitment in leveraging technology as a driver for efficiency, accountability, and economic growth. The implication for these visits, especially the visit that the president did, really in the short term, is to ensure that technical expertise and targeted training opportunities for the security sector. There's also the short term. The medium term will be to ensure that strengthening institutional capacity, long term more secured and connected Liberia. And the government for the next step will ensure that in the coming weeks, there will be the establishment of the U.S.-Liberia interagency coordination team so that there can be a follow-up for both the security sector. In conclusion, like I mentioned, the president did address when he came to the country the question of the importance of the visit, especially our country where Liberia stands from. So as part of our continuous effort to inform the public and really update the country on the activities of the president, we'd like to give some analysis on why we believe that this Peace Award that was received by his president is quite important. So this is an editorial titled, A Peace Award That Speaks to Liberia's Past and Its Future. When President Joseph Yuma Boakai Sr. received the Africa Peace Award, it was more than a personal honor. It was a symbolic affirmation of Liberia's long and often painful journey from conflict to stability, and a reminder that peace, once achieved, must be carefully protected and continuously strengthened. Liberia is not just any country receiving a peace accolade. It is a nation whose modern history has been shaped by civil war, institutional collapse, and the difficult work of national healing. The legacy of the Liberian Civil War and the Second Liberian Civil War, some of you may pretty much remember, as Liberians will famously call it World War I, II, and III, still lingers in our collective memory. Entire generations were affected. Trust in institutions were eroded. The road to recovery has required not only the rebuilding infrastructure or the rebuilding of infrastructure, but rebuilding confidence in government, in justice, and in one another. Against that backdrop, this award comes profound weight, and it shows a very important time in our country's history. It signals that Liberia's progress is being recognized beyond its borders, not just as a post-conflict state, but as a contributor to regional and global peace discourse. It reinforces the idea that Liberia's story is no longer defined solely by its past instability, but increasingly by its resilience and reforms. For President Boakai, the recognition highlights a leadership approach anchored in stability, dialogue, and institutional building. His administration has emphasized reconciliation, rule of law, and inclusive governance by specifically involvement in the pillars of the arrest agenda, but also his deliberate action by recognizing our past history, reburying our former leaders, and expressing for the first time a public apology for the situation of the civil conflict. The award validates these priorities, but it also raises expectations, and that's where the significance of this award depends. Peace awards are not endpoints, they are benchmarks. For Liberia, this moment should not be viewed as a declaration of arrival, but as a call to sustain momentum. The challenges remain real: youth unemployment, security sector reform, economic inequality, and the need for stronger public institutions. And these are specific things that His Excellency the President, his administration, and leadership really working very hard across all sectors to work on these things. And they're not just abstract issues, they are the very condition that determine whether peace holds or fails. In this sense, the award is both a recognition and a responsibility. This the President seriously believes. It also matters for being associated with peace and stability is a strategic advantage. It strengthens Liberia's voice in diplomatic spaces and enhances confidence among investors and development partners. Simply put, peace is not only a moral achievement, it is an economic and political asset. Equally important is the message this sends to Liberians themselves, especially the younger generation. Many young people know the Civil War only through stories. National recognition at this level helps anchor a shared narrative that peace is valuable, fragile, and worth defending. It reinforces a national identity built not on division, but on progress. Still, it would be a mistake to romanticize the moment. Awards can create complacency if they are mistaken for competition or completion. Liberia's peace must be continuously reinforced through tangible improvements in the governance, justice, and opportunities for all Liberians. Security institutions must become more professional and trusted. Economic growth must become more inclusive. Political differences must continue to be managed through democratic means. This is the real test. Ultimately, President Bouakai's receipt of the Africa Peace Award is important because it reflects both how Liberia has come and how far it must go. It is a recognition earned on the backs of countless Liberians who endured conflict and chose reconciliation. It is also a reminder that the work of peace is never finished. Liberia's story is still being written. This award marks an important chapter, but the chapter ahead will determine the lasting meaning of this award. That was one of the, like I said, two-part series of the analysis on why we believe that this is important, because many Liberians absolutely do believe or have asked the importance or relevance of the award. Additionally, Liberia is at a very important point when it comes to digital transformation and technology. And during the course of the week, our president did sign Executive Order 163, removing the Department of ICT from the Ministry of Post and Telecommunication to make it stand alone, really with a focus. Because today, in today's world, we're all living in a technological world, and every country or any country who wants to progress, you will have to be able to do that. And for our president, he believes in moving this country forward, hence the signing of the executive order. And in addition, we'll just do a summary of what the analysis we've made and why we believe in explaining why this is important. Why Executive Order 163 matters for Liberia's future. When President Joseph Yuma Bouakai Sr. signed Executive Order 163, he did more than just introduce a policy reform. He set in motion a structural shift in how Liberia government functions in the digital age. At its core, the order recognizes a simple but urgent truth: modern governance can no longer operate effectively without coordinated, secure, and citizen-centered digital systems. Executive Order 163 establishes the National Digitalization and Modernization Initiative, NDMI, and creates the Office of Technology, Digitalization and Innovation, OTDI, within the presidency. This dual framework is significant because it separates vision from execution. NDMI provides the national direction, a whole of government push towards digitalized services, while the OTDI becomes the engine that ensures standards, coordination, and accountability across ministries and agencies. The importance of this order lies first in its attempt to solve a long-standing problem in public administration: fragmentization and governance systems. Governance system often evolves in silos, leading to duplication, inefficiency, and wasted resources. Executive Order 163 directly addresses this by mandating interoperability, shared platforms, and a centralized inventory of government digital systems. This is not just technical housekeeping, it is a governance reform. It ensures that institutions speak with the same digital language, enabling faster service delivery and better decision-making. Equally critical is the order's emphasis on cybersecurity and data protection. In a time when digital threats are increasing globally, the directive to end and to enable and ensure that security by design across governance systems signal foresight. It aligns Liberia with international best practices, ensuring that digital transformation does not come at the expense of citizens' privacy or national security. Another key strength of Executive Order 163 is its respect for legal boundaries. The order clearly states that it does not override existing laws or statutory mandates. This is a deliberate and prudent design choice. It allows for reform without institutional conflict, ensuring that agencies retain their legal authority while aligning with national digital framework. In other words, it promotes coordination, not centralization of power. The creation of a digital government steering committee further reinforces accountability at the highest levels by placing oversight among senior officials. The order ensures that digital transformation is not treated as a technical side project or just a side project, but as a national priority tied to governance, economic growth, and public service delivery. However, the true test of Executive Order 163 will lie in implementation. The timelines outlined, such as the system inventory within 60 days and a national roadmap within 180 days, are ambitious, of course, obviously. Success will depend on political will, something that this president has and has given to this initiative, institutional cooperation, and adequate funding. Without these, even the most well-crafted framework risks becoming symbolic rather than transformative. Importantly, the order is time-bound, set to remain in force for 1 year because it is an executive order, while legislative backing is pursued. This reflects a strategic approach using executive authority to initiate reform while preparing for long-term legal institutionalization. It signals that digital governance is not a temporary initiative, but a permanent pillar of Liberia's development agenda. In closing, the Executive Order 163 represents a forward-looking blueprint for a more efficient, transparent, and responsive government. It positions Liberia to harness technology not just as a tool, but as a foundation for governance reform. If effectively implemented and legislatively sustained, it could redefine how the Liberian state interact with its citizens, making services faster, systems smarter, and governance more accountable. And these were the two parts of the office and department. And as we've said continuously, we will endeavor to ensure that we expand on President's actions, his decisions, in really explaining what the President means by this. Thank you also very much. We look forward to taking your questions, should you have any, and thank you and have a wonderful afternoon. Good afternoon. As always, you state your name, the institution you represent, and your question. Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Atty. Williams from the LBS. A lot was said about the executive order, and I want us to be precisely. But respectfully, you just passed over the funding aspect with adequate funding. And I want to know how intentional with all of the frameworks that you mentioned and all of the components that come with it, but I'm more concerned about government intentionality surrounding funding frameworks of that nature, because at the end of the day, this will be one of the key components to ensuring this coming to fruition. So I want us to throw some light on that, and also to place more emphasis. Are we creating a separate division exclusively to handle national digital matters for Liberia as a country? If you could provide it in the simplest way possible for the common man, that's actually what I want you to do for folks out there to understand the entire thing. I know you've read it, but if you can just do our usual Liberian thing in a summary, I would appreciate it. Thank you.
Yes, any other question from? Okay, so in terms of funding, firstly, this concept of digitalization is something very important, like I mentioned. No country right now, as the globalization is concerned with, you will not progress if you do not master the act of, digitalizing things. In terms of the time you will spend on paper-based activities, the time you will spend on doing things manually, the digital space now is evolving where it helps governance. In fact, one of the aspects of our governance structures that have done really well when it comes to e-governance is the PPCC. Liberia's procurement process is now going through the PPCC, that is the Public Procurement and Concession Commission, that is pretty much helping to speed up procurement system and structures to really do multiple things. For example, it cut down corruption, where you don't have to, do kickback or go to say, oh, Anthony, please help me, you do this on the table and stuff. You have a system. If your business is registered, you pay your taxes, you got all your documentation, you upload them on the platform, and it helps you, and it gives you access immediately on your, system, and tells you, okay, you have this time, come, or they will email you, or they will, have a connection and conversation with you without you not necessarily going to the office to interact with people. So, broadly, in terms of explaining what this will mean for Liberia, it will really help. So, to all our people, if, we are able to really upgrade and update our systems. From health system, for example. So you go to hospital and you have to register manually, your paper-based, and you can find your chat, you got to meet with the doctor, you got to type in the information. It takes a longer time. So what if you forget your card? In fact, just today, like a typical example, one of my daughter isn't feeling well. I had to take her to the hospital this morning. Got to the hospital, the doctor had to bring a manual file, went to JFK, manual file, fill out the information, and go through. So the next time we have to be able to bring the card. But imagine if we have a digital system and as a basic person, you forgot a card. You wouldn't need to be looking for the number or going through several papers or doing a new chat. You just go put in an ID number and put in the system, and your information is out there. Even if not, what if the doctor changes, a different doctor is there? So not even only in the health system, across our sectors, even in education, for example. Even today, very recently, the Ministry of Education has developed a platform of school data, readily available, active, current school information, where if you want to find a school in Cape Mount, for example, you go on the platform, you click in, you see the region, you know the number of students, you know the number of teachers, you know where the school is located, what the challenges are. You do that. When you do these across our different sectors, it's easier to find services and connect them. So the goal of the president here is to really be able to have an institution that will not be under the Ministry of Post and Telecom, to have its own, to really be able to find resources, because data-driven initiatives, they're very important. In fact, even in development, so before you do strategic planning and development, it's important to do those based on the information that you have. So for example, you can't just decide a development agenda without readily available data. So if you have data in systems where your system are digitalized, just on the click of an information, click on, you'll see where the challenges are. For example, you hear there's this thing happening in this part of the country. You go on there, find the information, see your contact number, and then you're able to do intervention in those areas. So if you want to do electricity, for example, you say, oh, right now, about, let's say, in all of Liberia, we have less than 50% of Liberians having access to electricity. That is an important information, but it's a general information. So if you want to go detail, or someone will say deep dive into understanding what the numbers are, that system will help you to say, okay, in Grand Bassa, for example, these communities, they do not have access to electricity. What is the system of electricity will work for them in that area? Would it be a temporary system, or long-term, or medium-term, or short-term? So I can go on and on and on and explaining why digitalization is important across our different development sectors, the arrest agenda in all of the areas. In agriculture, farmers, farm to market, people produce their product. They want to bring it on the road, but they do not have access. But if you have a system that tracks farmers, that know that they're cooperative in this space, and they have challenges, there are some people who, they have the resources, but they do not have the facility, and some people have the facility, and they don't have the resources. With this form of system, you're able to, support and bring, so every sector from rice, like I mentioned, agriculture, education, health, sanitation, security. For example, even with security matters, when something is happening somewhere, you have a system where you can find out, see the location. If you go to other places, they have some very important tracking system, camera system, if you will, where when a crime is happening somewhere, you're able to sit in your office and see what the activities are, or who's doing what, even with the issue of drugs and a number of different things. So for the president, this time is very, very important for him. There's a framework that's been built. There's also the documentation component of it. So one aspect will do the framework, the other aspect will do the setting up of the office, and this will help drive that in terms of resource mobilization and funding. Of course, the government is very committed in finding resources. But we live in a country where we have priorities everywhere. Our priorities in roads, our priorities in infrastructure. So there is naturally the challenge of resource mobilization of resource, but the commitment of the government to ensure that this gets the highest support possible. So this will definitely happen in terms of resource mobilization. So the government will support the team to find resources, to begin the preliminary work and work on their plans and see how they intend to roll this out. But yes, this is something that the government is committed to funding, but also helping to establish connections and find resources outside of government mainstream budgetary allocation, because as you know, it's a new establishment that just started. The budget year is already being implemented. The supplementary budget was also passed. So new conversation, but the government is committed to supporting that in terms of finding other streams of resources, but also helping to raise resources for this office. Yes.
Great. I don't know if...
Good afternoon, Madam PPS. My name is Prince Sa, and I report for the newspaper. I want to know what specific challenges in government service delivery prompted the insurance of Executive Order number 160 at this time. Thank you.
And also, ma'am, just to align with him a little bit, I know the document is actually lengthy. I have to go through it. By the way, you mentioned legislative approvals and other areas. I also want to talk about stakeholders' involvement also, because come to think of it, a lot of government ministries and agencies have got segmented data, and the fact that we want to take it to a national level in terms of centralizing our digital data or platform, all of these segments of data will have to be brought together. So what is it like in terms of stakeholders' involvement? I'm talking about institutions. I'm also talking about tech institutions, tech educational institutions, and also what is the effort in ensuring that stakeholders can come around this particular initiative to ensure it comes to fruition.
Yes, Prince, go ahead.
So I want to know how will the initiative address concerns about privacy and prevent the misuse of personal information during data sharing across government institutions.
Thank you. And as you listen, I'll just start with your last points. And if you listen, Kula, I did talk about the government seeing this as not a means of infringing on people's privacy, but also as a means to protect privacy and to respect the autonomy of individuals and people who will be, of course, utilizing the space. So yes, privacy. In fact, that is why even an institution like this is important, because everywhere in the world, the fact that you have cell phones, you have email addresses, you have other things, your data, your information is in a space. So the government will serve as that protection arm. So when there are issues, there are things that you need, there are some major concerns, you have a place that you can go to follow up, to get your issues redressed and to see, because there's an institution that is particularly and primarily responsible for that. On the question of what prompted this, as I mentioned, of course, we live in a digital world. If you're not in the digital space, the digital space will define you. So it has to be it didn't mean there's a challenge in a specific place. Of course, there have been challenges, of course, like I mentioned in the write-out or in the analysis, is that there have been challenges in sometimes overlapping of functions, sometimes institutions work in silos, sometimes lack of coordination, sometimes, a number of different coordinators. Sometimes these things are not even done deliberately, but because information management and information sharing is sometimes lower, and the competition for same resources. So if you're in a space where everybody knows what party X or institution X is doing, and institution Y is doing, instead of doing your own separately, you work together on a joint platform to implement a particular thing. So this will also help, cut down some of those, working in silos, because when you work together, you achieve maximum impact. So it was not like a particular point to say this institution was the reason why we do this, but it's a general idea. And because these challenges have permeated not just in this administration for a long time, over time in governance, it's a major challenge within governance systems. So to help solve some of the problems, and this will not ultimately solve the problem immediately, but at least it creates a way in which the conversation can begin and get started in working together for that. On the question of sustainability or security, I did mention on the issue of security, and also on how inclusive it is in the other people are involved. Of course, right now, the institutional framework have been set up. The president did sign the executive order. The next step now will be to activate the personnel, those who will lead the charge. Someone will say those who will be involved in the space, the leaders of the office. The plan is once that happens, they're now able to bring key stakeholders together. But as at yet, the executive order will now work on its own. So once, and that decision will be made soon, the president will do some appointments hopefully soon, and then we'll, make that announcement. So the owners now will be on the team to develop a major framework on how, or the work plan on how they intend to do this. Because as you know, and you also rightly mentioned, it's a short-term initiative because it's 1 year, because it's an executive order. By law, executive orders have lifespan for a year. However, the executive order did explain also there's a work happening behind the scene to ensure that it's a law. So once it's law and it's legally instituted, then the institution can progress and continuously move for a longer term. So definitely that is something that the government is looking forward to institutionalization, beginning the work and showing that an institution is formed through our legal process, and then the work can continue. So that team now will bring all the stakeholders together, help find funding resources, but also work with government in terms of pushing the agenda forward. But I believe the president's vision for this digitalization of our system is really on course, and it's important at this point in time for our country.
Okay, Anthony Williams here again. This will be the last one for me, by the way. It has to do with President Buhari holding crucial discussions there in the U.S. while he was on his state visit with partners in California. One was discussions held for the enhancement of agriculture productivity in Liberia. There's another meeting where the president held discussions with security practitioners to enhance the country's security sector, precisely the police. Usually when the president comes back from these meetings, I'm more concerned about feedback mechanisms and how officials of government can probably return to ensure they can speed up some of these discussions for us to know when they will start coming into action. So let's talk about these two meetings that the president held, and let's see that.
He takes along with him leaders of the sectors. By this, I mean, for example, the agricultural meeting that was held. The Minister of Agriculture was there. He was in the meeting. And the president's specific charge to the minister was, agriculture is number one priority for the administration. That made the arrest agenda the A in the arrest agenda. And the expectation for the Minister of Agriculture is to ensure that as soon as possible, they begin preliminary conversation on next steps. But interestingly, whilst they were there, even after the meeting, there were follow-up discussions and conversation with the Minister of Agriculture and the team, and they're intending to even do a follow-up visit to Liberia in the very soonest possible time. And interestingly, that meeting included key companies in California, in the U.S. area, in the Bay Area, companies that are into long-term and value addition. in the different areas. For example, conversations were centered around our fishery industries, rice production, how to ensure value chain along the lines of production, from production to where it gets in the plate, on the table for you to eat. So that conversation has been had. And, within the U.S., value addition is a key. Because even from manpower development, where job creation is key, you come to the planting, from the seedling firstly, the planting, the processing, the manufacturing, the final product, the transportation, all of that. So the whole conversation across the sector, they're currently very actively, part of it. And the president is looking forward to getting more feedback from his Minister of Agriculture. Of course, on the issue of the security, as I mentioned, Inspector General of the National Police, Inspector Gregory Coleman, was also in the meeting, and the National Security Advisor, Honorable Kofi Woods, was as well in the meeting, and both of them were charged, again, with the responsibility. In fact, following that meeting, the meeting was held in Washington, D.C., where the president first came, and the Inspector General did not follow the president to California because the head of the Arizona's public safety of their police, they were going to another meeting. So Inspector General Coleman was asked by our president to go through and attend those meetings, engage key partners, and see what he can come back with, specifically in enhancing our police. Our police, over the years, there has been challenges within the police, but at least for the last few years, since this administration, much efforts have been made in strengthening the police, even their comportment, of course, there are challenges here and there, but in the morning, you see them in the traffic, you see them well dressed, you see them coordinating things, despite the challenges, even with the improvement of the restructuring, the support to the staff, and even with the office. So there's a process, and one thing the president has mandated his security team to do all they can so that the fruition of that meeting can be felt. Someone will say trickle down effect. It can trickle down to the lay Liberian man or woman who will, be looking forward to getting what is important for that. And you said that was the last.
I said that was the last one, but please. In the executive mansion.
The other last, right?
Yeah, sure. In the executive mansion article about export-based food, sufficiency. When you talk to Mr. President, does he see a future where Liberia will be self-sufficient in terms of producing its staple food? And are the
President engagement, he's seen agriculture as a major way, in fact, a driving force behind our economy, but also self-sufficiency. In fact, when you speak with him, every time he remembers, back then, he said there were no importation of birds or chickens, if you will, coming to the country. He always talks about the many frozen foods, the chickens, the chicken feet, as he will, and other things. So for him, he's really looking forward to a country where we're able to produce our own food. Now we're producing some local farmers that are producing rice and selling it on the market. And our country rice is really very healthy as compared to the imported rice. In fact, a lot of doctors have recommended eating the country rice or the Liberian rice than the imported rice. The Atty, you clear it out, you pound it, and it's good, So you definitely you can see it within the president that he really wants us to we can eat what we grow and grow what we eat. And he's doing everything in his power to do that, from chickens, or we can have our own country chicken, or chicken we can grow here by ourselves without any major impact. Are we there yet? Of course not. Are we making progress? Yes. Are we on the road? Yes, we are. Will we get there? Yes, we will. 1,000% he's committed to doing that. So, he's very, he's also a farmer. He's been in the agriculture sector, a former agriculture minister. So for him, he lives and, talks about his survivability and self-preservation and self-feeding. We feed ourselves. And we're looking forward to it's before the end of his presidency. You got something to say?
Oh, yes. Let me just say something since you got my name. My name is Yubrini Masale. Madam PPS, thank you so much. I want to commend the president for signing the executive person who is doing his doctorate degree in the United States of America. And he has been going around to come to Liberia to do a research or wire. Why is it that students are failing in wax or wire? And how many teachers do we have order about this digitizing Liberia? We serve that purpose. So I just want to commend the president of doing that. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And someone who is very interested in the academics, I can tell you for free that access to information on Liberia is a tall order. When you're doing any research, especially if it's not your normal research, if you're doing, you will struggle to find information on Liberia, even in the digital space. Some of the work that we do here, one of the things we're working on, we're looking forward to doing is to really work with our interns and young people to really help to populate the web as to proper information on Liberia. Because if you Google Liberia now, you still have images of the warriors, outdated information, and we hope that this office will really look forward to supporting such initiatives such as what we're doing here, so that they can help clean up the web and put more information, more proper information about Liberia, but also importantly to people in the research industry to really help, in supporting that. So thank you all so much, and I'm sure it's been a wonderful time here, and I look forward to catching up with all of you the next time we meet, and have a good Friday afternoon. Thank you, and bye-bye from my side.